everybody. Is that what you say? That's what you say. Well, hello, dear listeners.
That's what you say.
Welcome. That's what I say. Should I say it again or just keep going?
Nah, I would keep going. I think you nailed it the second time perfectly.
First time. Welcome to another episode of Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey. I'm your host, Jason Johnston Yellen, a.k.a. the Whiskey Wizard, a.k.a. Dramgalf, courtesy of Lee Atwood at Backwoods Distilling. Joined the Whiskey Cherub. Do you have anything else going on, Whiskey Cherub? Are there other names that Joshua Morrissey Hatton is known by?
No, in high school, there were some people that called me Joshua the Mosher.
That sounds like it's a Northeast accent thing. I don't think I could pull off that rhyme.
I think you could do it. Try it. Just try it. Joshua the Mosher.
Joshua the Mosher?
Joshua the Mosher.
First time. So in this podcast, one of us brings a news story to the attention of the other. We read it in the first half, we riff on it in the second half, and we always try to get out of here in a tight 30 to 35 minutes. Mm-hmm. I was the reason for the season in the last episode, but before you and I hit record today, Joshua, I asked if I could be the reason for the season this episode as well. You seemed okay with it. Are you still okay with it?
I don't know. It just seemed as if I didn't have a choice. Like you didn't make it. It was an ultimatum, basically. My podcast, my rules, I think is how you said it. You kept banging the table. My podcast, my rules.
I very nearly choked on my Lagavulin 11 Offerman Guinness edition there.
Well, I am not choking on my Lagavulin 2017 Distillery only edition. I'm just enjoying it.
I like the fact that we're going to keep it in the Diageo family today, even if we're not able to keep it to Brora. So we've pulled an article from the spirits business. I say we, technically Jason has done so, but we have pulled an article from the spirits business. Brora Distillery restarts production after 38 years. Authored by Nicola Carruthers, who we have had as the author of note in previous episodes. Mm-hmm. This went live 19th of May 2021. Subheading, Diageo has restarted production at the refurbished Brora Distillery in Scotland following a multi-million-pound investment. And on one hand, I think this is interesting. I would imagine anybody who's listening to a Whiskey News podcast already knows this news.
Yeah.
But there's a wider conversation to be had here after we do the reading of the article. So here we go for our first half here. In October 2017, Diageo pledged a £35 million, 46 million US dollar investment to restart production at closed distilleries Port Ellen and Brora.
Okay, so it was that amount between the two.
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, go on.
Both sites were mothballed in 1983. Mm-hmm. Brora and Port Ellen are two of the most highly collectible Scotch whiskies in the world. The great Mark Watt joke when he was at Cadenheads. How do you make sure your distillery becomes highly sought after and highly collectible? Close it.
Yep. Checks out. Works every time.
There. I love it. That's one of the best sentences I've heard. Diageo gained planning approval to restore Brora's original buildings in October 2018. As part of a 3-year restoration project, the Sutherland-based Brora Distillery was taken down and reconstructed stone by stone to replicate the site when it was new in 1819.
Wow. So like part of it was still up and they said, you know what, to do this right, let's tear it down and
take it down.
Why do you build me up? Build me up just to do. Okay, never mind. That didn't work. Continue.
the renovated site, is capable of another 200 years of production, according to Diageo. As one of Diageo's smallest distilleries, Brora has the capacity to produce 800,000 litres of spirit annually.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that small. Wow.
It's just a wee teeny tiny, isn't it?
Yeah, yep. Still
That's
twice the
half
size
the
of
size.
Kilhoman, but
And that's always my thought. It's twice the size of Kilhoman. It's half the size of Talisker. It's half the capacity of Talisker. Half the capacity of Highland Park. It's always good to have those big names as balances. Sutherland native and Brora master distiller Stuart Bowman officially marked the launch by opening the site's gates and filling the first cask of Brora spirit in more than 38 years. Bowman's father was the last exciseman at the distillery. The exciseman being the tax man, the tax person, the tax official, if you will, Joshua.
this guy Bowman, Scott Bowman, you said his name was?
You always ask these questions in the middle of a sip. It is Stuart.
Stewart. Is he the chap
Scotty
with the big...
Bowman
Yeah.
was the famous coach who led the Detroit Red Wings multiple Stanley
Cup victories, yes.
That's who you were thinking
That's
of.
who I was because I love the NFL. So this Stuart Bowman, is he the chap with the big long beard? I've been seeing pictures of... He is.
He
Okay,
is.
that
He's the
beard
man
is
front and
majestic.
centre.
That beard is majestic. Okay.
He's a good-looking Scottish man.
Yep, indeed.
Bowman worked with industry specialists and archivists in reinstating the distillery and its spirits, and its spirit, singular. Bowman said, "We have gone to every effort to replicate as closely as possible the conditions, equipment and processes from Brora in 1983 in order to recreate the spirit for which the distillery is famous." His quote continues, "The original pair of Brora stills were carefully refurbished by our highly skilled coppersmiths. We raised up the original pagoda roof to conduct intricate repairs and rebuilt the stillhouse brick by brick, using original Brora stone to restore this historic Victorian distillery."
That is very cool. Have you been... Well, I'll ask you afterwards. I do have questions for you.
We have a subheading here, a subheading quote. New Dawn.
Okay.
Which I'm guessing Red Sonja had been used. The facility has also installed a biomass boiler powered by sustainably sourced wood chips from northern Scotland. Remember the day we were at Tomatin and we were spending some time with Graham Yunson and he was talking about the new boiler that they just brought on site and were running and operating, and it was a wood chip boiler.
I remember that.
At Tomatin.
Wow. Okay. That's very cool.
So
I forgot about that, but this is a good reminder. Yep.
There's another quote coming from another person, so hold on tight. Ewan Andrew, Diageo's president of supply chain and procurement, said, "This is a new dawn for Brora, a distillery that is a beautiful new jewel in the crown of our portfolio in Scotland. I am particularly proud that Brora will be a carbon neutral distillery entirely powered by on-site renewable energy. This marks a major milestone on our journey to invest in Scotland, its rural communities, and the future of Scotch whisky." End quote. We have a few more lines from Nicola, the author, the journalist. Brora, which sits within the Diageo Reserve portfolio of premium and above spirits. That's interesting. Premium and above spirits.
Yeah.
Recently released a trio of single malts aged from 38 to 48 years. Brora will welcome a small number of visitors by appointment only from July. Tours will include tastings of rare Brora releases and a new distillery exclusive bottling called the Brora Distillery Collection. Hidden beneath, comma, a Brora 1982 39-year-old. I just wanted to get the punctuation in there because I didn't want it to come across as the Brora Distillery Collection hidden beneath a Brora 1982 39-year-old, because then you might imagine smaller samples hidden underneath an individual bottle. So I thought the punctuation was important there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well done.
Final sentence. Islay-based Port Ellen is also due to begin production this year after Diageo received planning approval in January 2020. So there you go. There's the article. There's plenty for you and I to riff off on the back of that. So let's take a musical interlude and I will see you in part 2. So bringing us back to the reason that I wanted to take over this podcast that was meant to be on your watch was you and I covered the Falkirk distillery coming to life. We talked a bit about Holyrood. We talked about challenges that new producers face. And I think it's interesting that here we have Brorellen.
Oh, you're going to say Brorellen. That's so good.
Brorellen. Oh, Lord.
Rose Brorellen.
Oh, my Lord. Here we have Brora and Port Ellen, phoenixes from the flames. And we have Rosebank. And I think it's interesting to see distilleries that were closed for particular reasons, and obviously we know, and we had it in the article, 83 for both Brora and Port Ellen. Off the top of your head, do you recall the closure year for Rosebank?
I thought that Rosebank was also 1983, but now you've got me. Like I'm always confident with my dates until I'm asked about them.
Yeah, right. If we're going on the record and we don't want to be havering, then we might want something a little more solid in place here.
Until it closed its gates in 1993. So there was a 3 in there, but it wasn't victim to the 80s closures.
Yeah, I would have, if you'd asked me in the street what year do you think Rosebank closed, I probably would have given you an 86 on that one. But now from internet research, we know it's 93. So the point is this, Joshua. These 3 distilleries closed for reasons, right? And then they develop a following and people go in search of Port Ellen and Brora and Rosebank, and Diageo have had the Broras and the Port Ellens in the annual releases series, and the prices have become more and more and more expensive. And you can see the appeal there of bringing it back to life, right? Well, what's the cost on bringing it back to life? What could we sell more spirit for? Now, obviously, young Port Ellen isn't going to sell at the same price as old Port Ellen, and young Brora is not going to sell for the same price as old Brora. But what's interesting in that article there is it sounds like a bespoke project. You hear the reclamation of original stones. you hear about built to Victorian standards. You hear about the refurbishment of the original stills. And here we're talking original being the stills that were in place when it closed. Clearly not the original stills from when it was originally built. Then you hear about coming to the distillery by appointment, where you will taste a lot of old Brora. This isn't quite the term that I want to use, but it's getting at what I'm suggesting here, which is, it sounds a little bit like a vanity project. Do you know what I mean by that? Where it sounds very precious, and we know capacity's around 800,000 litres. Yes, that's twice a Kilchoman, but it's half of a Talisker. It's not coming to life as a powerhouse distillery. It's not going to be Brora going into blends for Diageo. It sounds to me like it's going to be, at least predominantly, a standalone single malt distillery that's going to trade in the name Brora and the association with those expensive old Broras. And so I'm curious, from reading that and from looking over the project, what's your take on Brora rising reborn from the ashes after 38 years dormant?
First and foremost, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for any distillery opening, any distillery reopening. I think it's wonderful for the category writ large. I'm excited. However, and I think what I'm about to say may talk more about Port Ellen than Brora, and I simply say this just because I've had younger Port Ellen. I haven't had much younger Brora. I think the youngest Brora I've ever had was maybe a 19-year-old, something like that. So I'm going to pivot. I'm going to pivot to Port Ellen here, just briefly, but hear me out.
You're welcome to.
One of the reasons why Port Ellen was never released as a single malt is because the flavor profile of Port Ellen at a younger age was not one that really fit the palates of the drinker of those decades that it was around. And one of the reasons why Port Ellen has become so incredibly popular is people have gotten to know their whiskeys at 25 to 39 plus years old, and they're experiencing that particular flavor profile. Both you and I have had younger teen Port Ellens and older 30 Port Ellens, and the two animals could not be any more different. And so I wonder if the same will ring true for Brora. Again, I haven't had younger stuff, so I can't say for certain. But it'll be interesting to watch how Diageo positions this, because if they're expecting to say, hey, now we're releasing Brora again and it tastes just like what you remember. No, you're going to have, how old are you, Jason? You're 47? You're going to have to wait until you're in your 70s to understand if Brora will be doing now what it was doing way back then. So I imagine that they're going to be rewriting history. They're going to be. This is the new age for Port Ellen. This is the new age for Brora. This is the new age for Rosebank, right? With Ian McLeod owning Rosebank. But I think both companies, Ian McLeod with Rosebank and Diageo with Brora and Port Ellen, will have to tread carefully on how they tell that story.
Yeah, I love your use a moment ago of positioning, because I love the idea of there being an affordable 8-year Brora on the market.
Yeah, love it.
I love the idea of there being even a 5 or a 6-year-old Port Ellen, affordable, on the market. I like the idea of a new generation of single malt drinkers having access to 2 more distilleries. And I think that was your kind of earlier opening comment there of new distilleries are an exciting thing as drinkers, as fans. On the business side, I'm curious about positioning. I'm curious about storytelling. But I'm also, and why I wanted us to return to this, or why I wanted us to cover this particular topic is, if you're Holyrood, you're blazing a brand new trail, even though they want a position within Edinburgh or the Lowlands or traditional grains or what have you, right? If you're Falkirk, you're blazing a brand new trail. If you're Port Ellen, something has been laid down. Consumers do have an idea as they come to you.
Exactly.
Brora, as you just laid out there, Rosebank, as you just suggested a moment ago. And so, yes, you've got this wonderful opportunity in front of you, but you've also got expectations. And what do you do in the face of those expectations?
Well, I thought it was interesting, and I agree with your statement. That it was interesting that you said it will be nice to have an affordable 8-year-old Brora, an affordable 8-year-old Port Ellen, etc. But I do wonder if you're spending, what's the equivalent of $46 million US to rebuild distilleries, one of them stone by stone from the bottom up. Are you creating a brand that releases an affordable whiskey, or are you coming out the gate as, no, this is going to be luxury. It's going to start off as luxury, and it will grow to be even more luxurious. I hope that's not the case. I hope they, and again, we bring up Kilchoman a lot because it's a favorite of ours, but what I've liked about Kilchoman and what I like seeing about Holyrood and what I hope to start discovering with Falkirk is you're able to follow this distillery's birth and evolution. And I would love it if they, Diageo, are willing to bring on more passengers in this evolutionary ride rather than premiumatizing the seats on the bus to bring in fewer people to enjoy that evolution, that rebirth of the whiskey. So again, it's back to positioning. How are they going to do it? And maybe they could do both, right? There's something to be said for, here's our standard stuff, but here's a special release, So they're smart. They can likely figure that out. I just hope that they're thinking of all people. Again, and I know there's things that you want to say, but I just want to add this in. You talked about the tours that Nicola Carruthers had mentioned in the article. What the article didn't specify was that the 3 tours were in the hundreds of pounds per ticket, but that included special tastings of old, rare, 30-some-odd-year-old Broras.
Well, the fact it's by appointment only.
And it's by appointment, right?
Right. It's not just pitch up in a bus with a group, which, whiskey and visitor centres don't really operate that way anymore anyway. You really do need to be calling ahead and getting a spot. But this by appointment only, I almost read as invitation only, where is it open to the public? Is there a wee tasting room for a wee cup of tea and a crumpet?
I would suggest you price things properly. It is by invitation only.
Well, there is certainly a segment who have not been invited. But I tell you what gives me hope, and this is what I wanted to say a moment ago, is we are hopeful with the Port Ellen positioning, the Brora positioning, just talking about Diageo at the moment, where that Lagavulin 8-year-old coming out in the 40s of dollars, right?
Yes.
Coming out for 40-something, depending on your market, depending on your mileage, for an 8-year-old, for a product that has a very expensive 37-year-old Lagavulin, right? Where we talked on One Nation Under Whiskey about the 16-year-old Lagavulin in some markets now being triple digits, where that, was always on the slightly more expensive side, but it was still considered a daily dram, right?
Yeah.
Then you've got, and we talked about, me having it in my glass earlier, the Lagavulin 11, the Offerman edition in Guinness. Again, depending on your market, you could be looking at $90, $95. It might hit $100. That's kind of pricey for this special release. But the special release isn't priced the same way as the 8-year-old. So that's really what I'm watching this space and seeing how will consumers new to Port Ellen and Brora be brought into the fold. And again, Diageo's smart. Diageo knows the value of whiskey tourism. It knows the value of people showing up at your distillery. Very much what we talked about for new distillers opening their doors. As you're waiting on that spirit coming of age, you want people walking in the door. The situation for Diageo is slightly different, is you still have aged Brora and still have aged Port Ellen that you can sell in your annual releases while you're waiting on the new Brora in the new Port Ellen coming of age. So definitely a different wrinkle there. But interestingly, to bring in another distillery, when we were friendly with Stuart Nickerson and Ronnie Rutledge and Graham Yunson, when they were reopening Glenglassa in 2008, where they had old Glenglassa stock, and then they had new make spirit, and they had old Glenglassa in the 40-year-old, going in those pear-shaped bottles and getting a great reputation, for what new ownership we're trying to achieve with a newly reopened distillery. There was a point, I'd have to double check the numbers, but even up until a few years ago, it remained true. At the time of reopening, Glenglassa had spent more years closed than it had spent open. And it was one of those stop-start distilleries. It's not like it was open for 40 and then closed for 40. It was open and then it was shut for a bit. And then it was reopened and then it was reshut. But at the time of reopening 2008, it had spent more time closed than open. So there you were trying to tell the story of this newly opened distillery. And there was Stuart Nickerson working hard to get the spirit that shall not speak its name, because it was, a blush spirit and it had a little bit of wine maturation going on in there, or a little bit of kind of dressing up to be interesting to mixologists. And at a time when not a lot of distilleries were being built or reopened. And then folks say, I don't really want your new stuff, but I really like that old stuff you had. What have you got in the mid-teens or the young 20s? None. Nothing. There's that. And then as Brora and Port Ellen age out of the older stock, where will they then be if it's bringing in a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10, a 12? How will that look as they then don't have the mid-teens and the early 20s? So a lot to consider in bringing something like this back online. But as a whiskey geek, it's wonderful to watch and exciting to watch. But at the same time, I know there's some boardroom considerations to be had to do this the right way.
I think at the very least they have a few things going for them. Obviously, the names. Right? You can't get any bigger than Brora and Port Ellen and Rosebank. Those are just 3 massive names. So that's an arrow in their quiver. Another is, by comparison, when Glenglassa reopened in 2008, the interest in Scotch whiskey was, it's still in a growth period now, but it was a bit more fledgling back then. There wasn't the, people were not as keen to try new and different things as they are now. I think if Glenglassa were to reopen in 2021 and to release new make and to do the blush, I think there would have been more success with that now, and it's just a timing thing, right? So I'm excited for them from that standpoint as well.
Which isn't to suggest they didn't have success at the time.
That's true. No, yes, and if that comment suggested that, I did not mean that. They definitely had success, and again, like Kilhoman, like some of the other, like Aaron, right? People were able to follow that evolution, and we were part of it, right? We
were.
We laid
Absolutely.
down some octaves. We've bottled some Glenglassa. You know, it was exciting, and I think the distillery remains exciting. I kind of wish Brown-Forman would put a bit more attention on Glenglassa. That's another story for another day. But anyway, I am excited about this, and I hope and trust that the folks in the Diageo boardrooms and in the Ian McLeod boardrooms will say, you know what, we need to have a lot of people on the bus, and there will be different levels of interest here.
Well, and the hope is it doesn't go down the Mortlach path, which is Mortlach had such a wonderful following, as it was bottled by independent bottlers, and whiskey nerds were in the very front seats for Mortlach, and then some Mortlach was made available, some OB Mortlach, and the pricing was astronomical. And again, we're talking about a smart company. Let's hope a lesson was learned there. That, and again, I feel so heartened by Lagavulin 8 being such an affordable entry offering from a distillery that's not producing huge quantities, that isn't going into a lot of blends, that there was a sense of where pricing can be and where you could bring in a consumer and where you could take them through the Lagavulin journey. I really am hopeful, and I hope I'm not being unnecessarily jejune, but I want to be proven right here that Diageo are smart and they're going to do smart things.
10 points to Gryffindor for the use of jejune.
You're welcome. Any closing comments before we try to get out of here with a tight 30 to 35?
Just that I am so incredibly excited to be getting back to Scotland and visiting these distilleries. We've been around them. We've been near them. Being able to visit them, to go inside, to be a part of that evolution. I want to track this just like I tracked Aaron and Kilhoman, and like we're looking at Holyrood. It's important, and I want to just stay on top of it, and that I'm excited for them, for Diageo, which is a weird statement, right? You say I'm excited for Goliath. Yeah, that's okay. Goliath is making some really fantastic stuff, so I'm excited for them.
Yeah, I'm excited to have another distillery on Isla to visit. And then another one after that as well. But that's another story for another day. We did get an email, and I do apologize. I'm temporarily blanking on
Richard
the name.
Baum.
Richard Baum, thank you. That's why we're a partnership. He did write into us. I'm sorry we didn't cover you in this episode, Richard, but we will pivot back. Maybe at some point in the future. Trust us. If you'd like to be like Richard and drop us an email, questions at One Nation Under Whiskey. Joshua will at least remember your name, even if I have a senior moment. No E in whiskey, as always. And this has been another episode of Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey.
Did you mention the email address, or did you just say you can email us, and then if you do, Joshua may remember your name, even though I have a senior moment. But remember, there's no E in whiskey. I don't think you gave the actual email address.
I thought I said it out loud. I have absolutely no commitment to that belief.
Just in case, give it to us.
Just in case, questions at onenationunderwhiskey.com. No E in whiskey today or ever.
Ever.
There we go.
All right.
I have been Dram Galf. You have been the Whiskey Cherub. And we're out of here.
That we are, Jason. Thank you again.
Cheerio.
2 chins.